Hi everyone, I'm Juliana. It's nice to join virtually, and I'll be speaking. I'll be speaking, following on from what Corinne has presented just now. I'll be speaking about some of the results that we got from the actual workbook, the workbooks that the students had completed, and talking a little bit about the barriers and facilitators to healthy diets that these adolescents had identified when we went to the different urban and rural schools in New Caledonia. So just to begin, I'd just like to acknowledge Maria Nanan, who had really undertaken a lot of this research. So she was an honours student with our APY project. And of course, that this work has been really done with the rest of our APY group, with Corinne and Rowena, Christina, Louisa, Stephanie and Olivier as well. So as Corinne had already sort of mentioned in her presentation before, we certainly have this, I guess, concern of obesity in the Pacific Islands. We can see from various research studies that the rates of obesity prevalence have really gone up much quicker than in other countries around the world as well. And our adolescents in New Caledonia are not, I guess, excluded from this particular concern and issue. So we know that about 25% of New Caledonian adolescents aged 11 to 16 are classified in that overweight or obese category. Certainly from the conference, and I'm sure from everyone else's knowledge, poor diets are a contributor to this problem of overweight and obesity, and particularly with these shifts from traditional diets to more of the adapted Western style diets as well. We also know that with adolescents that there is high use of digital technologies and even in New Caledonia as well. That 75% of food ads on digital tech that adolescents might be exposed to are actually on fast foods. They don't really market healthy foods necessarily. And in this, I guess, in this context that we all live in now, in this digital era, digital technology is actually unavoidable. So, and adolescents are receptive to using technology. So we do wonder whether there are opportunities then, perhaps, that technology and social media could be used for educational purposes. Not only, there is certainly the negative side of technology, perhaps sedentary behaviours and exposure to marketing that does influence them to have poorer diets, but perhaps there are also opportunities for technology. And we wanted to also see whether there could be opportunities then to align some of these interventions using technology to support adolescents in their diet, in achieving a healthy diet. So the particular aims of this component of our research as part of the bigger APY project was to identify the barriers and facilitators to healthy diets among New Caledonian adolescents. And also we were interested in finding out whether there were different factors that could actually enable healthy diets and how they could be approached, including whether we could use digital technology as a potential solution. And we really wanted to, all of this sort of information we have taken from the perspectives of adolescents. So as Corinne mentioned, we have used a range of methods in order to collect the data, particularly, and this is sort of focused on phase 1, which Corinne was talking about. We would get the students in the schools to complete a survey, and that survey would ask, would collect some information about anthropometry around their sleeping habits, their nutrition and sort of food habits around how often they would have fruits and vegetables and soft drinks and things like that, their physical activity levels, and also some questions around their use of social media and social networking. Another component then, as we can sort of see in this picture, is the students would form little groups, and there were group work based workbooks. There were physical activity ones and diet ones, but we've just really focused on the responses that students have given from the dietary workbooks for this one. So these workbooks are sort of formed based on like a scenario with certain characters that have been developed to be context specific to New Caledonia, but also using a trauma-informed approach. So we had 146 students complete the survey in New Caledonia and about 18 groups of workbooks as well that were analysed. For the more quantitative data, we used descriptive statistics, and with the workbooks, we've used some thematic analysis to understand some of the comments that students have made. So just in terms briefly of the participant demographics, we had nearly equal split between males and females. We had certainly more students from the urban schools because we had gone to two different schools. We'd gone to Champagnat and Magenta, and then we had students from Larabula in Lifu who were kind of our rural context. So just some sort of summary statistics from the surveys that the students had completed. They had expressed 89% of the adolescents had expressed that they had personal access to digital technology. About 80% actually had access to a mobile device. There was, I guess, high levels of access to Wi-Fi and internet as well with 85%. And about a third of students actually used apps and social media to find out information about health as well. So in terms of the facilitators and barriers for healthy diets, we have both individual and external factors. So I'll start off with these individual factors. So these factors above the line are the facilitators and below the line are barriers. So students particularly felt that, not snacking was considered to be a facilitator of them achieving a healthy diet. So some of the sort of comments that students made were, respecting meal times and not snacking before the time that it was to eat meals. Also things like health and achieving health from a more perhaps self-esteem perspective, having strength and good looks, and also avoiding illness were factors that they thought motivated them to achieve a healthy diet. On the other hand, elements like having cravings, particularly, the craving of sugar, individual sort of desires, emotions and motivations were seen to be potential barriers as well. Now, in terms of facilitators, external facilitators, they did feel that if externally there could be measures that would help limit access to these sort of unhealthier foods or bad foods that they termed, that could help them to improve their diets. They thought parents were a positive influence as well. And we did find that technology was actually a facilitator as well as a barrier. So in terms of facilitation, some students mentioned that perhaps when they watched TV and there were good recipes to follow, that this could help encourage them to eat more healthily. Whereas from an external perspective, when there were barriers in terms of technology was when, they might be exposed to different advertising that would encourage them to eat, fast food or poorly. There were other elements like social factors like friends who they thought could sometimes be a barrier to them achieving a healthy diet, as well as things like unhealthy food availability, cost, and different ads as well. Now, this particular slide, I'll take everyone through slowly, but this really just is sort of a bit of a mind map that starts to bring together all of these different ideas that the students had expressed around what they thought could be potential solutions to enable dietary change. And Corinne has mentioned that some of these have then become priorities that we have taken back to the students in phase 2 and around advocacy and around presenting some potential technological and app-based solutions that the students might then design and develop in collaboration with us. So in terms of digital technologies, the students certainly, did identify that they did use a range of different devices in our particular adolescents. So they would use smartphones, computers, tablets, but also things like apps, social media, websites, and health programs in order to access dietary information. They also found that the digital technology and looking up information about diet provided sort of education that could enhance their knowledge, and it also provided to some extent some motivation and encouragement. And these external factors around digital technology actually then feed in to some of those individual factors. So the individual factors around then changing food-related behaviours and habits, and even though these were the diet books that we had analysed, they did actually, a lot of these adolescents had actually linked diet with physical activity. So they do understand that, from a lifestyle perspective, perhaps to improve their health, that both actually come hand in hand. So that was probably one of the first priorities that were identified, that there was this individual responsibility that many students felt that they had to have in order to take charge of improving their diets. And then this linked also into I guess, access and consumption of sort of healthy foods, and a whole range of different healthy foods were mentioned by these students in the work booklets. And these could be, things like fruits and vegetables, bodybuilding foods, like proteins, and also consumption of water. And they felt like when they consume these healthy foods, that this also meant that they were being healthy. Now, obviously, then there would be some external factors that could help support, that adolescents thought could support them in increasing their healthy food intake. And this was around food access, access to sort of these healthy foods, and this could be achieved by reducing price. And they also had sort of mentioned around advocacy and petitions and things like that could help with that. And so that sort of leads into some of the external factors around regulations and policies that I guess students recognise that it wasn't all on them, but that government, food industry really had responsibility as well to help do this. So a couple of quotes I think I have here. Interestingly, what we did find were some of the students in the actual rural school, so in Larabula, actually had talked a little bit more around the regulations and policies and these external factors that could help them support a healthier diet. And they also, there's quotes around advertising of local products. So I think that's quite interesting. Often, we talk about advertising of unhealthy foods, but these students certainly identified that there perhaps could be an opportunity to advertise, healthy, locally grown produce as well. Now, in terms of unhealthy foods, foods that were sort of listed that might have fallen into that kind of category were sugar, soft drinks, fast food and fat, and processed and bad foods. And this was also linked with kind of some of those internal factors around emotions and also habits. So some of the quotes from the students around these individual factors for change, they said, for change, we should stop eating bad foods every day and drink plenty of water and stop drinking soda. So obviously they are aware, perhaps through their education at school, of what foods are considered to be foods that are healthier, that they should eat more of, and foods that are considered to be less healthy, that they perhaps shouldn't eat. Linking in with the unhealthy foods, in terms of the external factors, students had mentioned that perhaps increasing pricing around some of these unhealthy foods and reducing access to sugar through regulations, but also environmental nudging. So some of the suggestions that they had made around environmental nudging, for example, were let's try and restructure the shops where they might be able to purchase these foods, to actually put kind of the high sugar foods in the back of the shops, and not make it within kind of, you know, the first thing that they see when they go into the shop. So here are some of the quotes. You know, exposure to guidelines or healthy foods at the entrances, maybe hiding sweets at the bottom shelf, having even just less accessibility, having less candy on the shelf. So, yeah, we thought that was quite interesting, that even though perhaps these students and adolescents haven't necessarily, you know, done research and maybe are experts in the field like perhaps many of us are, they actually came up still with similar solutions. And so the third priority that was sort of summarised from what the students had expressed in the workbooks was actually to act and limit intake of sugar and soft drinks.
Sorry, Juliana, could you please?
Sorry, yes, go ahead.
Could you please conclude your presentation?
Yes, my last slide.
Okay,
yes, thank you. So in summary, I guess our, based on this work, I guess as Corinne has mentioned, we have then engaged in our second and third phases with that participatory research co-led by students, hopefully then to develop some of those technological solution or advocacy pieces that could then be targeted a little bit more at those external factors. And we can see, because students do actually use digital technology, that there is that opportunity perhaps to create some interventions that provide information, education, and encouragement for them to enable healthy diets. And that is all. So thank you, everyone. I don't know if there are any questions.
We are a bit late for the break, but we can maybe take 1 or 2 questions. And I think you will have to come and speak in front of the laptop for your questions.
There are no questions. I'm sure everyone wants to go have morning tea.
Too many questions. For example, you speak about healthy diet.
Oh, the sound's not very good, so if someone does have a question, please.
And my question is, for example, you tell also that you don't have to eat something before the eating time. And my question is, for example, at the middle of the morning, what about hypoglycemia? Because some have a small breakfast. They have to wait 4 hours or 5 hours before the eating time. Mm-hmm. So what about the snacks in this time? So this is a complex domain, and I wish you good luck.
I think so some of the quotes that we had presented were sort of just more things that the students had written down. I don't know whether it's necessarily reflective of what they actually undertake in practice in the schools, certainly. So, but I think probably that quote was more around, the students thought that could be a potential strategy to help them maybe have less unhealthy snacks. But certainly if there were initiatives, and I think some of the students had actually identified some initiatives around making access to perhaps like free fruit and veg or something at school that they could have at snack time. That could be perhaps something then that might enable them to have healthy diets. So I think whilst it's a little bit hard to read into some of the quotes that these students gave because there wasn't a lot of context and detail, I can completely acknowledge that, they should perhaps be having a morning tea snack. But I think the students had identified that maybe sometimes what they were snacking on was not always the healthiest option, which is why they were sort of saying, well, if we can have just foods at the main meal times, maybe our diet would be healthier.